You are ready to buy in 2024. I'm going to give you my top 10 tips for buying in 2024 as a first-time home buyer. I'm Shaheedah Hill, getting you over the hill to home ownership and helping you confidently buy your first home. So let's get right into the list. Number one, you should consider buying your grandma's house. Not your grandmother's, but somebody's grandmother's. The baby boomer generation, they are downsizing, they're moving to different states for retirement, that sort of thing. So you really need to consider buying a house that somebody older owns. Now, the benefits of you doing this is that they have a lot of equity in their home, so they can help you by contributing to your closing costs, helping you buy down your rate. It's going to be a resale home, so they're usually a lot larger than some of the new construction homes, and they're in more established neighborhoods. And also, they're probably more willing to negotiate because they have so much equity in their home, and they're either moving closer to grandchildren, and they're just really more motivated to move, and they're not that, stuck with interest rates and that sort of thing because their house is paid off. Now, the downside of buying your grandmother's house would be, or somebody's grandmother's house, is that it's probably not as up to date. But the advantage of that is not that up to date. So you're not going to pay full price usually because it needs some updating. So just consider, even though you may not be, when you're looking on Zillow, you're like, oh, these pictures are so old, really focus on the neighborhood, the house itself, the location, and try to overlook some of those cosmetic things because there's a lot of opportunity with baby boomer homes. Number two, quote your home insurance as early as possible. So in this home buying process, you're going to probably, unless you're putting a lot of money down, more than likely you're going to have to escrow your taxes and insurance. If you don't know what escrows are, then you can watch this video. But you're probably going to have to pay your insurance and your taxes with your mortgage. Now, you want to quote it as early as possible because in a lot of states, because of natural disasters, those types of things, insurance is a lot more expensive than it used to be. So you want to make sure that you're quoting that early because although you may be able to afford the house, you may not be able to afford the insurance. Number three, you need to understand what floating down your rate means. So when you have your pre-approval, they're probably going to give you an estimated interest rate on your mortgage, but they don't lock in that rate until you're under contract. Now, with rates going, depending on what's happening with inflation, what's happening in the job market, the stock market, your rate right now could vary, especially if you're under contract for weeks at a time. So you want to make sure you're talking to your lender about what it means to float down your rate. So if you were to lock in your rate, but then rates fall, is it going to cost you to get a lower rate? So you want to make sure you're having that discussion as early as possible with your lender, because if you are already locked in and interest rates drop significantly, you want to be able to get that lower rate. So have that conversation with your lender upfront. Number four, don't buy up into your approval amount. So for example, if you're approved for $500,000, don't think you have to spend $500,000. You want to take it at least 10% less than that. So your max would be $450,000. 10% of $500,000 is $50,000. Subtract that from the pre-approval, and then you should be looking for around a home for around $450,000 or less. You don't want to spend up to your approval amount. In the last year, because taxes and insurance have gone up for a lot of first-time home buyers that bought during the pandemic years, 2020, 2021, 2022, then their taxes and their insurance went up, and a lot of them couldn't afford their house. You don't want to go up into your max because if any of those criteria change, your taxes and insurance, typically your principal, the amount that you're borrowing, and your interest rate will be fixed, so it won't change. But your taxes can change, your insurance can change, and you don't want a small change in those amounts to stop you from being able to afford your monthly mortgage payment. Now, I'm going to go over the rest of the list, which we have 6 more, but I do want to tell you that I have a first-time home buyer masterclass and handbook, and the link is above and below. It'll save you a lot of money. by not making typical first-time homebuyer mistakes. Number 5, don't buy anything 100% virtually. Over the pandemic, a lot of people were buying sight unseen, and they're having a lot of problems in some cases with those homes because they fully didn't vet the process. So I want to make sure there's no reason that you can't at some point see that home before you close. So my recommendation is in 2024, don't buy a home virtually. Fly out either during the inspection phase, during the shopping time, if you're moving from out of state, and make sure you see that house before you close. Number 6, discuss commission early with your buyer's agent. Now, there are a lot of things that are changing with how your buyer's agent is compensated. Now, for the most part, in most areas, the seller may cover, like the seller's agent may share their commission with your agent, and you won't have to pay your agent out of pocket. But that's not always the case. There's a lot of lawsuits regarding the sharing of commission where the seller is covering your agent's cost. You want to have a conversation up front with your agent before you hire them as to how they will get paid and how they will be compensated through this transaction. Number 7, shop around for your best rates and best fees with at least 3 lenders. Make sure you do this. I know it's kind of a headache putting your information in 3 different places, but I promise you, you have to do this to get the best rates and best fees. If you just go with one lender, you're making yourself very vulnerable for not getting the best rates and best fees. Okay? So make sure you're quoting with at least 3. Number 8, make sure you're not spending more than 25 to 35% of your take-home pay on a house. If you stay as conservative as possible with your housing costs, you will be sure to not be house poor. And I've done this video explaining that 25 to 35% of your take-home pay. And remember, when a lender does their calculations, they're using your gross pay. They're not looking at your net pay. You need to make sure you're looking at your net pay, your take-home pay. Number 9, you need to consider multi-generational living. This is becoming more and more popular as affordability has become an issue, but you really at least want to consider it. Should your children, parents, or grandparents move in with you? If this is the case, because rent is so expensive, your children can save by living in a portion of your home. Your parents, whether they need to downsize from the home that they own or they're renting themselves, or even your grandparents, instead of buying a home just for yourself, is there a possibility that you can get a home that includes extra living space for not that much more money? So a basement, over the garage apartment, a place where you can do an ADU, a tiny home, anything that you can add extra housing on your residence. It would be worth it for you to move another family member in, especially if they're paying high rent elsewhere. Number 10, and this is the last one. Oftentimes people are so excited about getting the home, they forget to do their neighborhood research. So you want to make sure that you're getting not just a good home, but you're also moving into a good neighborhood. So I've done this video, and you should watch it next, all about how to choose a good neighborhood. Thank you for watching.